Cave diving is extremely dangerous and is for professionals only, otherwise you will die. Hello and welcome to Mr. Dark Time. There's a swimming hole in Texas known as Jacob's Well. You may recognize it as the photo with crystal clear water and a massive black hole that goes so deep it's just a black abyss at the bottom. Jacob's Well is a karstic spring from the bed of Cypress Creek in Wimberley, Texas. It is a 12-foot mouth filled with water that plunges 30 feet before continuing at an angle through 14 stories of an intricate cave system. Its water source comes from the Trinity Aquifer, which spans southwest Texas. The artesian spring once gushed water out of the cave mouth with a flow of 170 gallons per second. Now it's a mere ripple and will even cease flowing for some time. In 1850, European settlers found this magnificent hole with a fountain of water shooting up to 5 feet. The name Jacob's Well is referred to in the Bible, and explorers named it for its religious significance. As its fountain calmed to a light flow, more people began using the spring as a swimming hole. While many preferred to lounge around the mouth and dip their toes in, some were more adventurous. Amateurs could get away with diving down several feet, but to get inside the caves takes much more skill and experience. The caves of Jacob's Well are an unforgiving environment and an extremely challenging scuba dive. At least 9 people, but as many as 12, died trying to cave dive in Jacob's Well. Inexperienced divers often try to get into the cave system, which becomes such a problem that officials had to put a metal grate 40 feet down into the hole. The layout and formation of the underwater caves are confusing. The system features false passageways, narrow chambers, and multiple twisty tunnels. It's easy to become disoriented when navigating through a complex cave. An oxygen tank can only last so long, and if you don't know where you are and which way you should go, it's only a matter of time before you can no longer breathe. Experienced cave divers understand how serious a situation can get just from losing your light source. The first chamber is a straight drop to about 30 feet, then it angles down to 55 feet. The second chamber is a long funnel to 80 feet, where there is a restricted opening to the third chamber. Inside the second chamber is a false chimney, which appears to be a way out of the well, but has trapped at least one diver who lost his life in that false chimney in 1983. The third chamber is a small room with a floor of unstable gravel. Divers must inflate water wings to navigate this chamber successfully, trying not to stir up silt or dislodge the gravel. The tightest restriction occurs 15 feet down the next tunnel. There is a knife-edged formation in the ceiling and fine gravel below. The few who have seen the fourth chamber say it's a virgin cave with fantastic limestone formations and no gravel. Covering the bottom is fine silt that can totally obscure vision when kicked up by one misstep. The passage into the fourth chamber is very tight. It's very narrow and prone to gravel slides, which is how 2 divers in the late 1970s lost their lives. It was so dangerous that rescue was unable to get them out, and one almost lost his life during attempting. Officials eventually flushed out one of the bodies in 1981, but they didn't remove the other one until 2000. Many attempts have been made to seal the caves, but determined divers always find their way back inside. Many divers who attempted to make their way into the very last chamber have never come out alive, and the majority have never come out at all. Back in 1983, Richard Patton and Clark McConnell, 2 college students and experienced divers, went to Jacob's Well to explore the fourth chamber. As they dove deeper and deeper, going from the first to the second, and then the third chamber, once they made it to the entrance of the fourth chamber, things went terribly wrong. They pried open a gate that was at the front of the entrance for the fourth chamber. Richard Patton went first, removing his tank and pushing it inside. He then wiggled his way inside the narrow chamber. Richard made it inside the fourth chamber, but then quickly began to wiggle his way back out of the chamber towards his buddy Clark. Alarmed, Clark noticed Richard swimming toward him, screaming, desperately trying to frantically get out of the narrow entrance of the fourth chamber. And that's when he realized Richard did not have his mouthpiece or his scuba tank. Clark begins to desperately try to pull his buddy out of the narrow chamber. Once he pops out, the 2 begin buddy breathing. One diver breathes while the other holds their breath, something that is only done in emergencies. Swimming as quickly as they can upwards towards the surface, they made it out of the third chamber. They continued swimming out of the second chamber when they suddenly hit their heads. The 2 men realized they had just swam down a false chimney. What's even worse, they hear an awful sound coming from the tank, signifying they are out of air. Clark had taken a full breath right before the air depleted, immediately turned, and made his way out of the false chimney, and made his way out of the well. However, Richard was not as lucky. The final few moments Richard experienced were in total darkness as he desperately tried to find the surface. When his body was removed from the water, he was found jammed up at the very end of the false chimney. The well's last known victim, Austin mail carrier Wayne Wood Russell, was an experienced topside caver and an open water diver, but had never attempted cave diving and was completely unprepared. At least 9 people, but as many as a dozen divers, drowned trying to explore the bottom of Jacob's Well. The 4th chamber was finally sealed up for good. However, the bodies of the divers could not be safely removed and are still trapped in the well.